People who work for airlines, what are secrets passengers don't know? When flying overseas, there are generally no systems tracking the movement of your aircraft for several thousand miles, i.e. how they go missing. People fake needing a wheelchair to gain boarding priority. 10 wheelchairs get on and only one person needs it getting off. We call them miracle flights. If you checked your dog, there's about a 30% chance it's terrified before it even gets on the plane. Who knows how scared it gets during the actual flight? Bagroom agents will usually try to comfort a scared animal. But all we can really do is talk to it. So if you write your pet's name on their carrier, it usually helps a lot. I've never seen a cat who was scared in the bag room. Cats don't give a FCK. Had to fly an owl once. They had to drug the shitty out of it first. That there's a huge list of things that can be missing from the aircraft while still being allowed to fly. True. It's called a minimum equipment list, MEL. Counterintuitively, it's a list of what can be broken on the aircraft while it still remains airworthy. It should be noted that the operational limits of the aircraft are altered to respond to broken parts. For instance, if certain lights are broken, the aircraft is restricted to daytime use. You know how all the other armrests can be raised except for the one next to the aisle? Turns out that one can be raised as well via a small button in a divot on the underside of the armrest. Useful if you want to spread out a bit more. Though some flight attendants may tell you to put it back in place. If you check a skateboard by just slapping a sticker on it, it will get ridden or used as a dolly. Paramedic here. If you switch on your alarm lights on the ambulance while being on the inner field of the airport, because, well, you just get there sometimes, they will totally shut down all incoming and outgoing flights until they know exactly what's going on. My buddy learned this the hard way. Needless to say, people got mad at him. Needless to say, people got mad at him. Nothing says you F-ked up like being the subject of an FAA incident report. Not a secret. Just common sense. The reason some bags miss their flight or get misrouted is because passengers don't remove old tags. It confuses handlers as well as the conveyor belt scanners. I see it happen all the time. Employees and their families get ID tickets. ID is for industry discount, which means they only pay taxes and fees and nothing for the actual ticket. The airlines basically lets them fly for free. And not just with their own airline, but with every airline in any alliance. The tickets are standby tickets, so you're not guaranteed to get on board, but you get a seat more often than not. The family members can travel on these tickets without the employee. My dad worked for an airline in Star Alliance, so I used to get free tickets with airlines in One World and SkyTeam as well as Star Alliance. I usually traveled in business class all around the world. A return trip between Europe and Japan was something like $200 in business class, and maybe $50 in economy. I don't get any perks anymore, as it was only valid until I turned 25. I enjoyed this perk until I turned 25. 2. In Germany. For trains. Yeah. Well, when the drink cart is coming through, you can ask for a full can of pop instead of the tiny little cup filled with mostly ice. Not particularly a secret, but one time I was upgraded to business class on a plane that was delayed for maintenance. Just settling into my middle row aisle seat up at the movie screen bulkhead when a hatch in the floor of the cabin right at my feet flipped open and the maintenance engineer climbed up. He had a clipboard of paperwork for the pilot to sign, then climbed back into his hole, tipping his hat to the passengers before closing the hatch over his head. If you look for it, you can see a recessed pull ring in the cabin floor in front of the first row seats behind cockpit. 757 wide body, I think. Edit. Yeah, I get it. 757 is narrow body. That was the I think. Just how many elves does this plane have? I work revenue management for an airline. On average, the cheapest time to buy a ticket is Tuesday afternoon. The cheapest time to fly is Tuesday, Wednesday, or Saturday. This applies to US flights in my experience. Aerospace fastener production here. Nobody ever asks what is actually holding the plane together. Don't worry about it. Duct tape and good wishes. The coffee is absolutely disgusting because no one washes the container that goes out every morning. The station agents who get paid way too little don't give a shit about cleaning it. I certainly didn't when I worked for AA. Also, because we weren't given the proper supplies to clean it, we pretty much just rinsed it out and dumped coffee into it. Be nice to the ticket agent and they will pretty much always let you get away with overweight bags. If you were funny, I'd even not charge you for bags. My partner worked for Delta for about 4 years as one of the guys who loads and unloads your luggage and waves wands. Nothing is safe in those bags. They pop open all the time and your shit just gets haphazardly shoved back in. They get tossed around like volleyballs. So is a lie. A lot of decisions about boarding or switching flights are at employees' discretion. I have like 150 legs in the past 10 years or so and never had anything broken in my luggage. Buy good bags and don't pack like an idiot and you'll be fine. Worked on military aircraft, but it's something I've noticed pretty universal about jet engines in general. You have your auxiliary engine that runs while the aircraft is parked, providing power, hydraulics, AC, etc. while you're at the terminal. When getting ready to depart, you turn on your main engines. It takes a lot of power to get them started. As such, most of the auxiliary power goes to starting the engines. This is the point where usually you may see the lights flicker, and you will hear the whine of the main engine start up. The environmental control unit, or whatever they want to call it, stops cycling air during this start sequence. Without fail. If you watch for it, numerous hands will stick up and check or adjust the air conditioning vents as this happens. The air will kick back on when the engines are up and running. Edit. Okay. Till, and had forgotten. Jet engines use pneumatic power to start engines. I worked on jet turbines for turboprop. I have my manuals and storage, so I can't completely erase all doubt. But I do believe we used a hydraulically actuated starter. As shown in some movies like Executive Decision and Passenger 57. There is a secret hatch on every plane that allows people to travel freely throughout the aircraft. Also, Wade Boggs once drank 50 beers on a cross-country flight and then absolutely destroyed the Seattle Mariners the next day. May he rest in peace. Worked at multiple airports as a consultant, and this is common at almost all I've worked at. Mechanics love to take their coffee breaks right behind the security checkpoint. This is where you will see women in a rush with their outermost garments off and bending over to put their shoes back on. The jackpots are passengers that didn't know a sweater or hoodie they are wearing had to come off until they are told to remove it by the tsar. So they have very little underneath. I wasn't part of this, so don't downvote me. Just telling the tales of the trade. Rampage and currently bored and eating breakfast in the backroom here. If passengers are deplaning and we've already downloaded the aircraft, then I know 2 guys who will go hang out on the jet bridge and see who can find the hottest passenger. You wouldn't download a plane. This is your secret? They stand there and look for hot people? Airlines doesn't charge large or overweight people extra because they make the plane heavier. Or because they hate fat people or whatever. They do it because you are a security risk. If you knock twice, then twice again the cockpit will open. Silly me. Just standing there yelling the Elvish word for friend. Every time this kind of question gets asked, someone from an airline will mention this one thing. Do not drink any of the non-bottled water, tea, coffee, on the airplane because the water tanks are not being cleaned regularly and are full of bacteria and whatnot. Stick to bottled or canned drinks. Edit. Despite its misleading name. 2 men it's a cockpit. 2 women it's a box office. Almost every commercial flight you ride on has a dead body on board. Possibly 2 if you're on a wide-body, large, aircraft. Overstatement to say the least. I operate a 319 out of my airport and have loaded human remains around 15 times over 2 years. Former cargo agent. Can confirm. If you ever see a large white box being loaded onto the plane, boom, that's a dead guy. The blankets are coated in dried semen. I thought the question was about secret passengers. Stewardess stopped giving a shit a long time ago. If people knew how planes are held together, they wouldn't feel safe, even though they totally are. Planes are actually pretty strong moth cause it can fly in the middle of a hurricane. Of course most don't take the chance because it is still a fkin hurricane, you know. Nice try. Marry me and fly for free. Don't be shy about asking flight attendants for extra servings of food drink. I've seen, on more than a few occasions, free food and liquor given out when their mobile pay devices were in up. Also, pretty much everyone who has access to the aircraft when it's not in service takes food and drink from the galleys. So it's not really worth much to the airline. If you're super nice to the FAR, they can probably get you whatever you want on the house. What are secrets passengers don't know? Inside information not generally shared with the public. But that's not important right now. One secret people seem to forget is that airlines are run by normal people. When you say that airlines are evil and ruining your vacation and running an unfair business, remember that it actually is just a group of people trying to do their best at their job. This applies to anything really. Like that checkout operator you yelled out because your item scanned at the wrong price. You think the operators have anything to do with item pricing? No. Everyone should have to do a few weeks in retail. Like national service. This one is pretty much on its way out as a secret nowadays. But there really is no good reason passengers need to switch off mobile devices during takeoff and landing. The frequencies used combined with the lack of signal power in the antennae of consumer-grade mobile devices means there is 0% chance of them ever interfering with the plane's sensors and instruments in any way whatsoever. This has been tested ad nauseam since the beginning of aviation mobile communication technology. And it has never shown to be a problem. I think it's more to do with getting people to listen and do their belts up. People engrossed in games are a pain to talk to. All airline employees fly standby for free. Gate agents, rampers, mechanics. If they're an employee for the airline, they get unlimited free standby. So does their spouse, parents, children. Anytime you're at the gate and you see a list of standby passengers, chances are they're an airline employee. Also, you'd be surprised by how much stuff actually breaks on an airplane. Hint: a lot. Most of the broken stuff is insignificant. But every once in a while something big, like an APU, or a flight computer, or the autopilot, will break and the mechanics defer it to get the aircraft airborne. It's not unsafe. It's just more work for the pilots usually. A little late. But oh well. I used to work for a major airline in Philadelphia International, PHL. Theft amongst workers is horrible. Workers would open suitcases while inside the cargo area, waiting for the next cart of bags to pull up. They'd rummage through and find small electronics to take. This wasn't something that only happened a few times. There was at least one guy on every team that did it. I reported a few people, but the bosses didn't care. Eventually, I got into a position where I could direct which employee did what, and I kept the bad ones out of the plane. Some workers would walk around the break rooms trying to sell what they just stole. Some traded items, and others took them home. Always keep valuables in your carry-on. If possible, don't even check a bag. This is what happens when you don't use a serious tag. If I crash this thread, will you die? When you warm up the seat with your butt, the farts of the passengers who sat in your seat before you will be released and infuse your clothes. One boat ticket to Hawaii please. Nice. A Ryanair secret that was exposed in a documentary featuring undercover footage was that useful in an emergency, types were encouraged to move from seat A1, I think, as people who sat in A1, in the event of an emergency that threw them forwards, would be impaled on a metal lever in front of them, therefore rendering them useless to help others. If you are flying with someone and you're not seated together, wait until you get to the gate to ask to change seats. The airlines always have blocked seats that they want people to pay for. If nobody purchases them, they are usually given away to standbys. If the agent looks busy, just stand and wait patiently. Source: been doing this for a long time. Edit: FCK or down votes. Do I look like I care? Clearly if you don't agree with this, then you probably need to find another job. I've been doing this for a long time and it never bothers me. Guess I'm one of those rare people that doesn't mind helping out passengers. If you push up on those things on the wall, they become windows. There is no phalange. That there is virtually a vacuum outside the plane. We know. We just try not to think about it. It's usually company policy that in the event of a vibrating DLDO being found in your luggage, we never imply ownership of the DLDO. We use the indefinite article DLDO. XFO here. You wouldn't believe how often airlines will load big bags full of cash into the cockpit or in the front hold of the aircraft. It's usually to pay off a plane charter, or the takings of the previous sector's duty free. But often, we will have between you a cute 10-100k in cash sat next to the SO in a nice little bag handed put there by the ground crew. Edit: FO equals first officer. SO equals second officer. Every A380 flies with an SO. Paying off plane charter means sometimes cash is given from one agency or airline sharing the flight if they do not wish to bank transfer to be handed directly to management, assuming your flight is heading to a cash counting office or headquarters. Previous duty-free takings is the money made on the previous flights for that day, assuming you're on the last leg of the day. Or conversely the first of the following day. Many reasons for cash rather than bank transfer equals liquidity. Immune to losses against bank forex rates. Remember, most of the large companies have future options to cash rather than pay a local bank and on the day spot exchange rate. Better folks? Used to be an ATC. I know some horror stories about controllers who have cracked. Also about a time both the pilot and company pilot fell asleep at the controls. Post 9/11 so the rest of the flight staff couldn't get into the cockpit to wake them. Post 9/11 so the rest of the flight staff couldn't get into the cockpit to wake them. I won't dispute the rest of the story, but this fact is blatantly wrong. In a case like this, you wouldn't have answer from inside the cockpit. You'd have ways to get inside from the cabin. There are ways to keep the door locked from inside, but it has to be a willing decision from inside. A pair of incapacitated unconscious asleep, pilots won't prevent anyone from the cabin to use the emergency code to get inside. Once no answer can be received when calling in. I work in the cabin. It's a pretty standard and simple procedure. Both to keep checking on your pilots, not only for drinks and meals, every XX minutes or so, with a call, and to memorize the correct way to open the electronic lock from outside, if needed be. Fully expect this thread to appear on the Daily Mail website within the next 48 hours. 4/8/15/16/23/42. We can board if you want to. We can leave your luggage behind. Cause your luggage won't board, and if it won't board, well, they are no luggage of mine. I work fleet service for a major airline. At a smaller airport, that means I clean your plane inside and out before it goes out. We clean your plane every now and then. It ranges wildly how long the plane has been out. Sometimes we would get a plane once or twice a week. Other times it would be a month until we get to deep clean it. Quit putting your FCK gum everywhere, you savage. It takes F-king forever to peel that shit off. Quit using your bath bags to put trash in and stuff it under your seat. I take the safety cards. We need those safety cards. Sometimes we clean only the back outside of the plane instead of the entire plane. Front ain't dirty. Why clean it? I get to sit in the cockpit and look at all that cool shit. Woo. I love writing in the bins.